We are now recording as well. So thanks guys for joining Battle Buddies Live today. We brought back last week's guest because it worked so well having Kevin here with us. And Kevin has a really great document that he's going to share with all you guys, and it's how to work with and around HR. I read through it last week after we wrapped up, and I'm just going to be quiet, sit here, and turn this over to him and let him do his thing. And I'm going to mute.
Thank you, Chuck. Now all I have to do is figure out how to share my screen. And all right, we're getting better. And here we go. So basically, at the risk of selling out my fellow HR people, this is my presentation on how to get a job despite human resources. And because this is geared towards veterans, you know, who is this guy? Well, I started in the Air Force back in 1984. I have a master's degree in HR. I have advanced certifications in HR. I've served on boards for the Society for Human Resources Management and Professionals in Human Resources Association. I'm also an adjunct professor for the University of Redlands, and I'm currently working as a director of HR. And just a quick disclaimer, anything that I say today is personally my own beliefs and do not represent who I'm actually working for. And yes, I did in fact fatten up after getting out. It's my DD Form 214 body there. But I live kind of split between Las Vegas and beautiful Lake Havasu City here in Arizona. So I guess I'm kind of a Southwestern kind of guy. So here's kind of an overview. We're going to talk about finding your focus, preparing yourself, avoiding disappointment, multiple ways to break into HR, and believe me, this is the good stuff. And then I'll give you a little peek behind the curtain. So the first thing is a little reality check, and that is that HR works for the organization it serves. So they don't necessarily work for you. I know they tend to blow all kinds of smoke up your skirt, so to speak, but really they're just trying to find the best people possible that are willing and able to work for what the organization can afford to pay. They also tend to fill just one position at a time. So maybe this isn't your time. Maybe they just found someone that was better qualified and they go with that person. HR is not looking for you. They're looking for somebody who has the skills, knowledge, and ability to do the job. You may have a great personality, but they're not going to discover you unless you have what they're looking for. And it's also to understand HR is comprised of robots and humans. So just as robots can't muster human thought in selecting someone, sometimes the humans make mistakes. To err is human. So it's definitely not a perfect system. So if you're looking for a job right now, you're currently in a job search, I really encourage you to find your focus. You don't tell me, oh, I could do anything, because you can't. There's too much of it out there. You've got to be focused. So really, what is your true passion? What is it that you want to do? What job or position are you looking for? Who do you want to work with? Do you like working with people? Do you like being on your own outside? You want to be a lineman? Whatever it is, figure it out. Where do you want to work? Do you want to work in the city? Do you want to work in the country? That's important too. And how long do you want to do it? Some of us have to consider that we may have some physical challenges that are not going to allow us to do manual labor into our 50s or 60s or even 70s. Some folks might get a job where they get to work primarily at a desk, at a computer. That probably has a little longer life to it. Just something to consider. You definitely want to prepare yourself. And this is the reason a lot of people don't have jobs, don't get the jobs because they just don't have marketable skills. So go find out who's doing what you want to do and what skills do they have and how can you get those skills. Look at the job announcements and see what people are asking for. If you lack the skills, figure out what you need. Figure out what knowledge you need. Maybe you need to read some books. Sometimes that's an interview question. Tell me about the last book you read to see if you're keeping current.
Hey, Kevin.
Yes, sir.
I have a quick question for you. To back up one slide, when you mention the thing about what do you want to do? So I've taken some of those assessment things in the past, probably a decade ago or so. Do you have anything off the top of your head that would work well for these guys that are in that I don't really know what I want to do assessment tools out there? Maybe free ones or low cost?
I'm a big fan of the Myers-Briggs type indicator because that's something that you can find for free online. That's also abbreviated as MBTI, but that was used actually primarily during World War II to help make sure the right people were in the right jobs. Um, but again, it just kind of comes back to what is it that you want to do? What is your passion? And then once you figure that out, find out who's doing it and how they get paid for it. And who knows, maybe the pay is worth it, maybe it isn't. When I was younger, I wanted to be a commercial diver. Then I found out their life expectancy was 35 years, and I thought, maybe I don't want to do that. So sometimes you don't know until you start exploring.
Okay, I just put the thing that Kevin was talking about in the chat, guys, up on the Battle Buddy page. So, okay,
And
sorry about that interruption.
no worries. I'm going to run through this, but Chuck, you stop me with any questions you might have. So again, all of this, you've got to figure this out for yourself. And you could usually go to your local employment office and they will have free assessment tools too. So whatever your local employment office is, I know a lot of them are closed because of COVID right now, but when they open up or if they offer virtual services, that's a pretty good deal. But the earlier you prepare yourself, the more quickly you land a job, especially when you need one. And even if you're working right now, especially if it's a job that you don't like, prepare yourself because it's a lot easier to get a job when you have a job, quite frankly. And here's some ways that you can avoid disappointment. That guy up in the corner there. Read the job announcements carefully. As an HR director, I get people applying for jobs that I've posted that are nowhere near qualified for it. And they really didn't take the time to read the job announcement. And don't waste your time applying for jobs if you're not qualified. Go get qualified. Again, go get that skills, knowledge, and ability. But if you're not qualified, don't waste your time. And don't apply for jobs that don't truly interest you. I've had some people apply for jobs. I look at the resume. I'm like, oh, this looks good. I call them up and I'm like, hey, are you still interested in this? They're like, no, not really. Okay. Do you have any other jobs? Well, probably not. I mean, it's like, just be honest. And again, don't count on HR to discover you just because you're a good person. You really have to have what they're looking for. And one other thing, and Chuck and I were talking about this earlier, sometimes people say, oh, this company, claims they hire veterans and they don't because they didn't hire me. Well, maybe 100 people applied. Maybe 20 of them were veterans and they hired one veteran, but they didn't hire the other 19 because they only had one opening. So again, you kind of got to manage your expectations if you really want to avoid disappointment.
Hey, Kevin. So
Yep.
speaking of that in particular right now, when the disclosures at the end of these online applications that are common, when it says, are you this era? Are you disabled? Are you impaired in some capacity? Any of that stuff. As an HR director, do you see that come through on the applicant's submission to your job postings?
No, I use ADP and I never see that. That just goes into statistics to keep us, help us keep track of who's, how many of each group is applying, type of thing.
So guys, that's something to really listen to right there, okay? So Kevin's blind to that stuff unless you put it on your resume and you put that in your cover letter or whatever. But these guys are not able to see those attributes because of the possibility of filtering through. Maybe you don't like a particular veteran status or something like that. So those systems are meant to be blind, so discrimination cannot happen. Just want to let you know that. So when you click veteran status, don't think that gives you guys points to get into a system or preference or any of that stuff. The only way is you have to let them know that you're a veteran and cover that bingo card completely with everything they're looking for.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't really, it shouldn't give you points, but it shouldn't take points away either. But again, depending upon the job, it kind of helps to, maybe mention that you're a veteran. I had an IT guy, I need to hire for an IT position a year ago. And as I'm going through the resumes, there's this one guy that had a whole lot of experience. And I thought, well, I'm only looking for like one guy to keep our computers running. This guy's probably way too experienced. And I kept, going through all the resumes. And I must have gotten like 75 to 100 for this one position. But one of the veterans employment reps that I work with in Las Vegas, Vicky Triplett, she sent me an email saying, hey, I understand you're looking for an IT guy. This guy's an Air Force veteran, and he's interested in your position. And when I looked at the resume, I'm like, oh, this guy looks familiar. And sure enough, he was one of the guys that I passed up, and he didn't put on his resume that he was a veteran. I don't need to know a lot of details. As long as he's a veteran, that's generally good enough for me. And I ended up calling the guy in only because she sent me that email identifying him as a veteran. And I hired him. This is a great guy. We're still friends to this day. So just something to keep in mind. Okay, so let's get to the good stuff. And I tried to have a little fun with this as far as how do you break into an organization. And quite frankly, some of the entry points are kind of difficult, but some are easy. Some are hidden, and some are going to take a little more work. So as far as like breaking into a building, let's look at some of these different ways. The first one is the front door, which is HR. There's a long line of people waiting at that door, line forms to the left. Don't count on applicant tracking systems. You still have to apply online in most cases, but HR doesn't work well for you unless you have exactly what they're looking for. But with all that said, don't give up at the front door because there's other ways to get into a building. Just looking at the numbers here. Again, for a typical job announcement, you might get 100, 200 people that will apply. And maybe of that, 5 to 10 will be considered. With Indeed, which is where I post most of my jobs, I can ask a bunch of questions. And if people don't say that they have a certain amount of years or they don't have certain experience, I won't see their resume because it'll say like preferred or required. And if there are certain things that are definitely preferred, that's going to knock out those that don't have it. But again, 100 to 200 apply, maybe 5 or 10 will be considered. Only 2 or 3 are going to be called for interviews. Only one's going to get the position. So it is kind of a numbers game. So I've had some people say, oh man, I haven't been able to get a job in like 3 years and I must have applied to at least 50 different positions. And I'm like, 50 positions in 3 years? Are you kidding me? Last time I did a job search, it took me 3 months to find a job and I applied to over 278 positions. Your job is to get a job if you don't have one. So just start playing the numbers, get in there. Okay, so that was the front door with HR. The back door is the hiring manager. Try to figure out who the hiring manager is. Go on to LinkedIn or Google or Facebook or something like that. Try to find them. And then where do people like him or her hang out? Are there seminars or conferences or professional meetings or bars or special events or whatnot? Find out where those people are. If you can figure out who the hiring manager is, sometimes you can go right to that person. I don't recommend going to that person saying, hi, I'd like a job. A better strategy is to go to that person and say, hey, I would love to work for your company someday. Maybe you can give me some advice on what I could do to prepare myself. That allows you to build your network. That's a lot less intrusive than saying, I want a job. Because if you just say, I want a job, they're going to say, great, go to the front door, go to HR. They're take care of you. And then they never hear from you again. So try to get to know who the hiring manager is. The next thing is your friends. If you're focused and you say, look, I want to work as a logistics person at Amazon, great. Who do you know that's currently working there? Okay. If you're not on LinkedIn, for heaven's sakes, get on LinkedIn. If you get on LinkedIn, I'm more than happy to connect with you. Just add a note that says we met via this webinar. I am the only Kevin Panet on LinkedIn. So there you go, a fellow friend, network, whatever. But check your former coworkers from other places you've worked. Maybe, some companies offer an employee referral bonus. So if you say to your friend, hey, I understand you're working at Amazon, I'm interested in this. do you think you can help pass my resume to the hiring manager? Well, if they know who it is, there you go, you're in. And believe me, the HR people, we got so much stuff to do. If a manager says, hey, I got this person that I want to interview, fine. That's one less thing as an HR guy that I need to worry about. So I'm always happy to have people go through our system and go talk to the hiring manager. And again, there might even be a bonus for your friends to hire you. A lot of companies offer employee referral bonuses.
Hey, Kevin. So I want to give these guys an example of a workload for a company that I've been working with. It's a manufacturing company. This lady herself has to hire 125 people in a manufacturing place by herself over 90 days. So, if you think about that from a reverse funnel perspective, and let's just say that she gets 10 people that are qualified to everyone that or five, what was your number, 5? So she's got to interview about 500 people, 600 people just to backfill that headcount. And then she's got to receive a couple thousand emails probably, or a couple thousand resumes to go through. So if you use Kevin's method right there of, hey, I got a buddy that you should interview, you just lighten the load on Kevin pretty significantly, and you'll become his friend.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
But it also depends on where you live and how deep the talent pool is. I'm out here in the desert. It's 115 degrees today. I'm trying to hire automotive service mechanics for Kingman, Arizona, Bullhead City, Arizona, and here in Lake Havasu, Arizona. And the population here in Havasu is only about 40,000 people. So not a lot of talent to choose from. So sometimes you get lucky in that respect, or sometimes you might have to move. If you can't find the job in your own town, consider going somewhere else. Okay. Another way to look into a building, you kind of peeking through the windows, who do you know that knows someone in the organization? Hey, I know a guy who knows a guy. Maybe they can introduce you to the right person. And again, look at how you might be connected on LinkedIn. I'm getting close to 28,000 connections on LinkedIn. I've been at it for a while. I think there's like 300 million people on LinkedIn, and I was one of the first 14 million, which sounds like an early adapter to me. But there I am, and I've got connections across the US, and a lot of my connections are recruiters and HR people. And so you just don't know who might know someone that could help you out. It kind of goes back to that 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon. Somebody in your network or someone knows someone that can get you to the hiring manager, guaranteed. Now, another thing that people don't normally consider is internships. And there's some really great internship programs that are out there. Even for transitioning service members, the military is now paying their salary while they do like a 6-month internship. And that gets them real world experience. The company basically gets free labor, and it's a win-win for everyone. In fact, I was just introduced to a Ford internship program because, again, I'm hiring people for 2 Ford dealerships. And apparently Ford, it's a 2-year commitment. You have to have an honorable discharge. The employer has to pay $7,500 up front, and $4,000 of that goes to the individual's toolbox. But then they are actual Ford employees, and they're on the Ford payroll for up to 2 years. And this is a great program. It's a win-win. Ford gets qualified people working on their cars out in the field. The company gets some free labor short of that $7,500, and the individual not only gets real-world experience, but they actually go to school and they become a master certified mechanic after only 2 years. So you don't ask, you don't get. So consider internships, especially in nonprofits. It's a lot easier to get them in nonprofits. They tend to be more competitive the higher paid they are. A lot of them are paid. Also, usually only nonprofit and government can get away with not paying their interns. Everybody else pretty much needs to start paying their interns. That's the rule now. And then finally, and I'm not going to say that staffing firms are bottom feeders, but I kind of put them down there in the basement. Who knows? Some larger companies will use external staffing firms so they can bring them on. They call it try or buy, and they can bring them on for 3 to 6 months and then transition them to the actual company. My attitude is to always be nice to recruiters, but never trust them. Because again, they're not your friend unless you can make him or her money. So the recruiters, I'm not going to call them pimps, but yeah, they're pimps. They're flesh peddlers. They are trying to find the right body that they can sell to a company. So if you're that right person, great. Always be polite to them because you never know. I got hired once by a recruiter. It does happen. And the silver bullet, as far as I'm concerned, instead of asking for a job, again, find out who's doing the job that you want to do or who's managing those folks and ask for an informational interview. This is a lot different than saying, hi, I'd like a job for your company. I'm sure you would. But if you go to a hiring manager and say, hey, you may not have anything today, but I'm just recently getting out of the military, or, I'm a veteran and I'd really like to get your insights, your advice on how I might get to work for a great company like yours. Quite frankly, people are flattered when you ask them for advice. So it's actually really easy to get an informational interview because so few people ask for it. You bypass HR. HR doesn't know. You're getting some valuable insights. Who knows? Maybe they're telling you stuff and you think, gee, I don't really want to do this after all. Or maybe you think, wow, this is great. And now I know what to do to prepare myself. It's a great networking tool. So again, now you know someone who's working in that industry. And again, don't ask for a job. But when a job opens, they're going to remember you versus all these faceless resumes that they see come through their email. So follow up with a thank you note, send them a little card or something saying, hey, I really appreciate your time. If there's anything I could do for you in the future, please feel free to ask. But I highly recommend informational interviews. They're so rare. People are so flattered when you ask for them. It's a great networking tool. And quite frankly, it got your foot in the door with all these others that are stopped by their applicant tracking systems.
Hey, Kevin.
Yes, sir.
One thing, too, that helps guys when you're doing those informational interviews that Kevin's talking about is they get a good feel for your personality. And this is probably 10 years ago now. I remember seeing a thing in CIO magazine, and they asked CIOs, that's Chief Information Officers in America, if they would rather, what attributes they would prefer to hire for. And team fit beat competency, just to give you an idea. So if you get in there, they like you, and they can train you on a couple things that you might be short on, that's an easy way for you to cover that bingo card if you're trainable. And if you're a vet, chances are you should be trainable. Depends if you can train those old dogs or not, right?
And even if you work for a company, you can do this within your company. I was working for the Boeing company helping build C-17 airlifters down there in Long Beach, California. And I wanted to work for Rocketdyne. And these were both under the Boeing company. Well, Rocketdyne was about 50 miles closer to my house. And I called up the director of HR. I was a generalist back then. And I said, sir, I'd like to work for you someday, and I'd like to know what I could do to prepare myself. Would you mind if I dropped by and got some of your insights? And he's like, well, yeah, no problem. We set up a date and a time, and I sent him my resume, and I met with him, and he said, Kevin, I really like what you have here. Unfortunately, I've just had my budget cut, and I've had to lay off 2 people. But if I hear of something, I'll let you know. And I'm like, oh, okay, thank you very much. I appreciate it. Shook hands. 8 months later, I get a voicemail message that says, hey, Kevin, this is Mike Jimerson out of Rocketdyne. Hey, you might want to check requisition number, da, 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 da. I did. I got the interview. I got the job. And so it was a slight increase in pay, but the fact that I'm now working 50 miles closer to home made a world of difference in my life. So again, it's worked for me even as an internal candidate.
Kevin, before you go too far, we did have a question come across asking, what do you mean never trust a recruiter? Can you maybe expand on that a little bit?
Sure. Because again, recruiters don't work for you. The recruiters are not getting a paycheck from you. They're getting a paycheck from the company that they work for. And so, unfortunately, a lot of recruiters will say all kinds of stuff to hook you on the line. Or they actually know somebody else that they're going to hire, but they need a couple more resumes to make the person they want to get hired look better. It's shady and it's unfortunate, but it does happen. So it's kind of the old trust but verify. I don't know. I just have, it's very rare that I've run into a recruiter that I thought had ethics and integrity that I felt I could actually trust. Sad but true. But again, they're flesh peddlers. They're trying to find the body that they can sell to the company that's going to give them money. And quite frankly, a recruiter is normally paid anywhere from 20 to 30% of an individual's first year salary. So you can imagine if they're trying to place someone who's going to make $100,000 a year, that body is worth $30,000 to them. So they're going to do things that normal humans wouldn't necessarily do. Okay. Hang on one second here. Hang on 1 second.
Sorry, there's no like page here.
There's a what? It's for Jim Cruz.
Okay, perfect.
Thank you. Sorry, I'm at work and somebody just showed up for an interview, but he's here to see my service manager and not me. So anyway, yeah, I'm still at work. I'm on Pacific time or Mountain Standard Time. So anyway, appreciate your patience. Little peek behind the curtain. People often ask, hey, where did my resume go? Like it went into some black hole. Okay, so the reality is if it goes into a stack of resumes, if you weren't near the top, you're just not being considered. Or people say, wow, why didn't I get a call? Well, because there's probably more qualified candidates that were considered. Again, they don't know you. They don't hate you. They got nothing against you. They're just trying to find the person that most closely matches what the hiring manager is looking for. Maybe a resume didn't reflect that you had the skills, knowledge, and ability to do the job. So don't take it personally. Move on. Somebody told me once, you got to kiss a lot of frogs to find your prince. Pucker up. Get ready. Just keep going out there. Somebody else said you miss 100% of the shots you don't take. So you just got to keep at it. And then some people ask, do they really keep my resume on file for 2 years? Yeah, they do. That's the law in a lot of states. I know it certainly is in California. They may keep it longer, but then again, they're keeping it in the bottom of a file cabinet somewhere, or they're keeping it online. So unless you're top of mind, you're forgotten. That's just the way it is. Again, can you trust a recruiter? You can trust them to act in the interest of the organization he or she serves. That's what it is. So they may act like they're your best friend, that they're your buddy. Well, they certainly are if they think that you can help them make that money or help them reach their hiring goals. Just trying to be a realist here, keeping it real. So how do you know if you're actually being considered for a position? Well, basically, HR will start increasing their communication with you. They're going to start checking your references. Normally, they're not going to bother checking your references unless somebody actually wants to hire you. So that's probably one of the best signs. But if you don't hear from the organization, get over it. Move on. Don't stop your job search until you get a job offer in hand. Again, in a job search mode, your job is to get a job. Some people say, well, how long should I wait until I follow up with them? A week is probably fine. If you follow up with them every day, you might irritate them, and just out of irritation, they might decide to go with someone else. So if you're the one, they're going to let you know. And if you're not, just keep going. But again, if you can develop relationships with people inside that company, you can ask them, hey, have they hired anyone yet? And your friends will tell you, oh yeah, they hired a guy last week. Okay, again, you're not the one, so keep going. Never trust just one job to hire you. You need to keep going. So again, there's a lot of different ways to break into an organization. HR can help, but don't count on it. You have to work to get work. being in a job search mode, that's your job, is to get a job, and it takes some effort. Those notification services that Indeed, LinkedIn, Career Builder, Simply Hired, ZipRecruiter, when they say, do you want to be notified by these jobs when they come out? Yeah, you do want to be notified, and you want to jump on them. The sooner you jump on them, the quicker your resume is getting looked at. I had to hire a cashier here last week. I turned on the job and on Indeed on Friday, and I had to turn it off on Monday because we had too many candidates. So if somebody didn't respond to that notification until a week later, sorry, job is gone already. So pounce on those when it's something that you really want to do. Remember that you have the power. Whoops, I tried. You have the power to make the right choices that will lead to employment sooner rather than later. I know it can be depressing. I know it can be frustrating, but you just got to keep on. And perseverance and tenacity, it pays. And again, hopefully sooner rather than later. So what questions could I possibly answer for you? I know that was a lot of stuff.
We have nothing on Facebook at the moment. One thing that you talked about earlier was preferred skills versus required skills. And you made a comment, and maybe I misunderstood, but you said that people that don't have the preferred skills are also not going to get.
No, what I meant, okay, so there are required skills, and that means this is an absolute deal breaker. Like if I say you have to have a valid driver's license and somebody says that they don't, then that's what we call a knockout question. And so I'll never see that resume because it got knocked out. So if I say bachelor's degree preferred, I probably set something in my system that said, bachelor's degree preferred. So if they have an associate's or a high school, at least I'm still going to see the resume. But if they say required, if you see that in a job announcement, that generally means it's a hard and fast, this is what they got to have if they're going to be considered. Chuck, you're on mute.
Sorry. Usually I'm so chatty, I never put the mute on. So how many resumes or applications did you say you got for the cashier?
I think I got like 35.
Okay.
And that's here in a town of only 40,000 people. When I was in Los Angeles and I put in for like a receptionist, I could get like 150 over the weekend easily.
Yeah. So it's competitive even for a receptionist job is what you're saying, right?
It can be.
Yep. And so when you get past the things are required, like let's say it's 10 or 20 years of experience, then you have the preferred things, you can start getting real selective on that as well, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And again, it just depends on how deep the talent pool is. Like for those automotive technicians that I need, I'm definitely willing to offer a relocation assistance because it's just so hard to find those folks locally. But I also reach out to UTI, which is a school that trains them. So, every time I get a new job, I always start developing my recruiting network. So a lot of people think Goodwill is just a thrift shop, but they have a very strong veterans hiring initiative. So I tend to share all my job leads with my new friends at Goodwill. Also with the state, usually the state, again, has these veterans reps. And so I'm going to send my jobs out to them. And, I'm going to look all over the place if it's a tougher job to fill.
And then I'm guessing that you also work with employment services people, like they used to call them workforce centers here in Minnesota. Now they have some other name. I don't know.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's what I meant. Like, those employment services. I tend to stay away from the temp agencies and staffing firms unless I'm really desperate.
So question for you, or here's another discussion point as far as, since you opened up the door here on where you pick your talent, okay? I want to go down the path, and we talked about a little bit last week, job fairs. Not to make a 2-hour discussion out of this, but how do you handle someone who's like, hey dude, get me a job, versus, oh, you work for this automotive group, are you looking for lube techs right now? You want to give people your perspective on that, and when you're hitting those job fairs.
So if somebody goes to a job fair, it's really a good idea to do your homework beforehand. Find out who's going to be there, and then you zero in on those companies. You have a plan when you're going in there. You have an objective. You're going to talk to, of the 30 companies that are listed, there's 5 of them that you want to talk to, and you need to look at their job boards, see what jobs are open. And if you go in there and say, hi, I understand that you're looking for an XYZ. Here's how I fit what you're looking for. I would love to have an opportunity to come in and interview for that position. You're going to impress whoever's behind that table. They're going to say, wow, here's someone who actually wants to work for us, who understands what we do and appears to be qualified. What's your name again? And the odds are they're going to write down your name. And of course, they're going to ask, well, have you already applied online? Okay, you have to do that too. But then at least they know, here's somebody I met. It's an actual person. Again, not just a faceless resume. They're going to go look in the system and see if they can find you, and hopefully they can. And then they might say to whoever is in HR, hey, I'd like to interview this person. And that's another thing. Most job fairs don't have HR people at them. It's maybe a third of them have HR people. A lot of times they have the regional manager there, or they have some other hiring managers, again, that are looking for something very specific. I found that with a lot of the job fairs, it's not the HR people there. It's folks that just, one guy said, so, do you work in HR? And he goes, oh no, I'm just a regional manager, and I was told to show up here and hand out all this stuff and tell people to go to the website. I'm like, well, that's not real helpful, but that's what he was told to do.
So there's a question from Chris Tochtenhagen, retired sergeant major, okay, fresh, probably the last 60 days, I'm guessing. I've known him for a long time. So he's asking, what's the purpose of the initial phone interview from an HR perspective, and what are the items I should prepare for?
It's a screening interview. It's trying to find out, like if I call someone, in a lot of states, I can't ask them how much money they're making at their last job, but I might call and say, hey, thank you for applying for this position. Just want to ask you a few questions. And again, some of them are like those knockout questions. Do you live in the local area? And if they say no, if relocation assistance is available, great. You tell them that. Maybe they say, oh no, I'm in Texas, and I'm like, well, I'm in Arizona. Were you planning on moving to Arizona? Well, I was thinking about it. Okay, if I have someone who's down the street, I'm probably going to be more interested in that local person. Or the whole pay thing. I might say, okay, well, we've budgeted $50,000 to $60,000 for this position annually. Is that something that you can live with? And I'm one of those guys that believes in telling them what I've budgeted for the position right up front. Because again, I don't want to waste their time, and I don't want them to waste my time if that's not something that they can live with. So a lot of times it's just kind of a pre-screening question. In other words, there's something about your resume that's interested them. There's something good about you that they just want to make sure that you're somebody that's worth bringing in and putting in front of the hiring manager. So as far as preparing yourself, I recommend that you again go look at the job announcement and be prepared to talk about how you fit exactly what it is that they're looking for.
So Kevin, I don't know, you work for some big companies. Are you familiar with the company 10K?
You got me on that one.
Okay, so that's a shareholder public statement that these companies will publish, and typically speaking, you'll see what the executives' initiatives are coming up, what risks they are seeing coming forward. So if you're looking to go into one of these roles where you can help solve those problems, you are going to probably put yourself in a little more impressive position with that screener and the hiring manager to know, hey, I see these are you know, 3 of the things that fall into the department that I'm looking at coming into here. So a company 10K, look it up. If it's a publicly traded company, they will have one. If it's privately held, not going to find it, but you should be able to dig around on their site as far as their vision, their strategy going forward, some of those things. It's a good idea to know if you're going into a business unit that's expanding or contracting or turning around or whatever. So I worked for WorldCom once upon a time. That was a tough place to work. If I would have known what I know, I wouldn't have gone back to work there after they'd gone through some of the corporate scandal stuff that they were in. So it's good.
And I apologize. I thought you asked me if I heard of a company called 10K.
Oh,
yeah, I know what the. So I know what the Form 10K is. It's something that investors look for. But almost every company on their website is going to have something that says about us. You definitely want to read the about us. If they have a section with press releases, you definitely want to go through their press releases. That again gives you insights into what's happening with that company. I've only had one hiring manager be a little dismissive. I went to go interview for Home Depot once, and the guy says, "So what do you know about our company?" And some people think that's a throwaway question. It really isn't. You know, and in this case, I said, "Oh, well, I understand that you have 148,000 associates working in 2,400 locations, that you're looking to add another 120 stores within the next year." And he's like, "Okay, stop. You saw our website." I'm like, "Yes, I did." So, and I did get past to the next level interview, which was interesting. But again, it pays to know the company, as Chuck had said, because again, that kind of demonstrates your motivation, your understanding of the company. And I'd much rather hire somebody who actually wants to work for me versus the person who says, "Man, I'm just looking for a job." And I understand that, got to feed your family, got to live. But I'm like, man, if you're just looking for a job, McDonald's has plenty. But if you want to grow with us and be a part of what we're about, then here's what you need.
Kevin, one thing that has puzzled me over the years, and I've heard it more than once, I've heard it said about me, I've heard it said about others, is, and actually you even said it earlier when you were going through those 200 plus applications for that one IT role, is, oh, he's overqualified. And I understand the concept, but doesn't it make sense that if they're applying for the role that they probably are interested in it, whether they're overqualified or not? Because that seems kind of like a lame-ass excuse to bypass somebody.
So there's a couple different schools of thought, and I've run into that myself as a job seeker. If somebody tells me that I'm overqualified, my comeback is, yes, but I'm willing to work for what you're willing to pay me. So why not have a win-win? And sometimes that works, sometimes it doesn't. But the company's fear is that if you are overqualified, then you're probably going to be looking for something else within 6 to 12 months. The idea that someone's actually going to come and work for you for 5, 10, 15, 20 years, that flew out the window a while ago, but we'd like to think they'll stay with us for at least a good year or two. That's kind of the way it is. But again, this is somebody who doesn't know you. If you know someone within the company that can give you a referral, that's going to help. Especially if you tell that person, "Look, I know they're going to say that I'm overqualified. So here's what you tell them. I actually want to work for that company. And I understand the pay may not be what I got in the past, but you know what? My kids are out of the house. I actually don't need as much money these days." I mean, like for me personally, I'm 57. I'm going to turn 60 in a couple years. I'm going to get my pension finally, because I did 12 years active and 9 in the reserves, because I went the reserve route and I'll get money until age 60. And so could I afford to take a job at a little less money that I actually want to do for a place where I want to be? Sure. You know, I have that flexibility. But again, unless they know you, they don't understand that, and they may just go on to somebody else. So that's why it helps to have an advocate somewhere within the company that can go to the hiring manager. They don't even need to go to the HR, just go to the hiring manager and put in that good word for you.
All right. Well, we don't have any more questions. Sue, do you have any more questions?
No, I'm good.
Kevin, I appreciate you jumping in here, especially last minute like this today. I think you probably answered a lot of questions and got rid of some of the mythical creature called HR that is very confusing to a lot of us out there.
And I know there's some people that are going to say, oh man, well, that's not fair. Well, one of my teachers once told me, if you want fair, go to the county fair. I mean, it is what it is. And knowing how to work with it, I think empowers you to be more effective in reaching your goal, which is basically to get a job that you actually look forward to going to each day, instead of being grumpy and, frustrated and depressed and everything else. You just got to keep plugging away, because that perfect job is out there, and they just need to find you.
Cool. That is a great spot to end. All right, guys. That's all we got for you today. We appreciate you listening. Go ahead and feel free to put some comments in there, and we'll do our best this week to respond to everything that comes this way. Or you can also send us direct messages if you don't want to be publicly responded to. That's fine. We understand that you might have an employer that's watching you and might know that you're trying to make a change or something like that. So we want to respect your privacy as well. So that's all we got for today. Have a great day, guys. See you next week.
Take care.
Thanks, everybody.
Happy trails.
Yeah. Or stop stream. There we go. All right. Recording is